Hey kids, welcome this morning. I'm glad you're here. I'm excited to be with you today. I wanted to ask you to make sure that you tell people about our Bible study and join me. We're going to have another awesome day in God's Word, and we've been hearing about what God's doing through Moses. So please share with a friend, get your own pen, paper, right? All that stuff. I want you to have something to color with. We're going to have 4 different scenes where you need to color. So get your paper out, get ready. Ask your parents for permission to share this so that other kids can know about God's Word. We're going to go ahead and dive right in. If you remember yesterday, where was Moses? Moses was in the middle of the battle with Pharaoh, telling him, let my people go. God had said, hey, you need to let my people go and worship me. And Pharaoh said, no, in fact, I'm going to double down. I'm going to make more work. I'm going to give you more to do. We're going to beat you more slaves. We're going to treat you even worse. I don't know God. Who is God? And we talked about how Pharaoh was the epitome of rebellious humanity and human authority against God. And so God says, okay, it's time. I'm about to flex and show you who is truly creator of heaven and earth, who is truly God. And so in chapter 7, we begin to see Moses come before Pharaoh and say, let God's people go. And when Pharaoh says no, we have 4 different scenes, 4 scenes that are going to help us see God show his power. Moses and Aaron represent God to the people, but also Pharaoh represent his hard heart. The first one is after the snake, then Pharaoh is unyielding. That means he won't give in. He says, I don't care. I don't want to hear from God. I plugged my ears. Maybe you've done that with your brother or sister. I'm not listening. I'm not listening. I'm not listening. That's what Pharaoh's heart and his ears are like. I'm not listening to God. And so God says, stretch out your staff to Aaron. Tell Aaron to do this. Now, I've just drawn Moses, but Aaron and Moses are up there together. Stretch out your staff over the waters of Egypt. And what happens is not just the water in a jar. Moses stretches out his staff, and all the water in Egypt, in the jars and everywhere, becomes blood. Becomes blood. That's the first plague. God says, hey, I'm going to send this sign to show that I am God. And he turns the water into blood. It says even here in chapter 17, over the streams and canals, over the ponds and all the reservoirs, they will turn to blood. Blood will be everywhere in Egypt, even in vessels of wood and stone. And when he did this, the river that was full of fish and full of life and animals, it stunk because, animals they live in water. They bring oxygen into their gills, fish do, through the oxygen that's in the water. And in the blood here, they actually start to die. But here's what it tells us. It says, remember, there were spiritual forces against God that were in the midst of Pharaoh's rebellion against God. And it says the Egyptian magicians did the same thing by their secret arts, and Pharaoh's heart became hard. So he wouldn't listen, because there was still deception, and it seemed like there were other powers that were showing something like what God did, not as expansive, but they were flexing against God. So 7 days pass, right? 7 days go on where the blood is there and the land is full of a stink. And then after the Lord strikes the Nile, the Lord tells Pharaoh, hey, again through Moses, let the people go. Let them out. Let them free. And Pharaoh doesn't want to. Pharaoh will not let them. And God says, I'm going to send frogs on the land over the whole place. The Nile, the river, and everywhere else is going to be covered in frogs. Pharaoh won't listen. And so Aaron stretches out his hand, and frogs come out over the whole land. This is what my frogs, I don't know, you draw frogs, but I've got a frog on Pharaoh's head. I got frogs all around Pharaoh. Moses is saying, listen, you need to recognize God is powerful. He's trying to lovingly warn you to wake up and let his people go. But that's not what Pharaoh's interested in. Pharaoh instead has decided, no, I'm going to have a hard heart. And you know what? He's being spiritually blinded as he's being spiritually hard-hearted. The Egyptian magicians, they caused some frogs to appear as well. They caused some frogs to come up as well. So still, even with what God's doing, it's more powerful, just like the snake. ate their snake, just like they made some blood appear, but he made the whole river of Nile into blood. Just like there were some frogs from the Egyptian magicians, they didn't cover the whole land. God's power is way more obvious, but these things are given just enough deception, just enough for Pharaoh to believe what he wants to believe, that he is the king. So Moses warns him again, hey, you better wake up. You better listen up, because God's going to send gnats. He's going to send gnats. Now, have you ever had little biting gnats and these little things that, sometimes when you're riding your bike in Michigan, you're riding along, and on a summer night, you'll ride through a cloud of these little bugs, and you'll get like 6 in your eye, or maybe you'll get them in your hair like I do. Well, I don't have any hair, right? But you'll see this happen. Well, God warns Pharaoh, wake up, but he won't. He won't. And what happens is God sends through the staff of Aaron, he strikes the dirt, and gnats are all across the whole land. That's what I've got here. Gnats covering everybody. And here's what's cool, guys. This time, the magicians, they try to do it, and they can't do it. Verse 18 of chapter 7 says, when the magicians tried to produce gnats by their secret arts, they could not. And they said, this is the finger of God. The magicians, the spiritual guides, and the ones who are helping in the deception of Pharaoh, they said, nope, we can't do this. This must truly be God. It's not that Moses and Aaron have just got a few tricks up their sleeve. This is the finger of God. But here's what was crucial. The passage says, but Pharaoh's heart was hard, and he would not listen, just like the Lord had predicted. God predicted that Pharaoh's heart would be hard, and Pharaoh, just like God planned, would not listen to his message. And so God says, no, hey, I got another warning for you. It's going to be bad. It's going to be bigger than gnats, but just as pesky. It's going to be flies. Get up early in the morning, the Lord tells Moses, and confront Pharaoh out by the river and tell him, you have to let my people go. If you don't, swarms of flies will be on you and your officials, on everyone. But here's what's cool. God shows a distinction this time in number 4. Now the people of Israel will not be impacted. My people, he says, I will deal differently with the land of Goshen where my people live. No flies will be there, so that they will know that I, the Lord, am in this land. I will make a distinction between my people and your people. All right? And you know what? Pharaoh won't listen, and the Lord does it. He sends swarms of flies, dense swarms of flies. They pour into Pharaoh's palace. They pour into everything. And they are so, it's a thick cloud. Now, I put a few flies. All right, you draw some flies around Pharaoh. But these flies are showing not that in Israel there's no flies. In the people of Israel there's no flies. But Egypt is bearing the consequences of their rebellious king. Remember, there's 2 kings. God is the king. And his people are protected and blessed. But the rebellious nature of human hearts is we want to be king. And Pharaoh, the rebellious king, he and all he rules over is suffering under the fact that he's trying to rebel against the Creator. And his heart starts to get a little like, hey, maybe I don't want this. And so he asked Moses to pray for him. He's asked him before, but now he says, okay, maybe I can let you go do something. Maybe I can get out. But as soon as Moses prays and the Lord takes back the penalty, just like in these other cases, Pharaoh's heart proves he didn't want to listen to the Lord. He just wanted out from the pain of his own rebellion. He just wanted to get out from the moment. And that's so many times what happens. We don't want to listen to God like Pharaoh. We just want to get back to doing our own way without God getting in our way. When in fact, God is the one who gives us life. He's the one that gives us breath. He needs to wear the crown. Pharaoh just keeps being hard-hearted. He won't listen to God, and he keeps getting warnings from God before it gets even worse. God is flexing and letting him know who truly wears the crown. He does. And these first 4 plagues, we're going to see 5 more tomorrow on Monday, and we're going to recognize the fact that God is the one who wears the crown, and that Pharaoh can't flex against God. It's only going to get bad when creation tries to rebel against the Creator. God sent blood in the river. God sent frogs from the river. God sent gnats to Pharaoh and flies to Pharaoh to let him know who's truly in charge. Thanks for joining us today, kids.